I believe that it's likely that on Earth, prior to the modern era, there have been civilizations far advanced beyond where we are. They always say, we don't know what these are. Well, that's a big lie. We've known what these objects are since the 40s and 50s. Well, honestly, I don't necessarily think that there were ETs that made them. I think there could have been some extraordinary technologies that were used. For example, there is a record of technologies that existed on Earth, of civilization more advanced than we are now. And the question is, were there some use of some type of electrogravitic levitation technologies that were used? The other problem is, even when the Smithsonian paid $5 million to simulate using mathematics and the technology that archaeologists say existed back in the time of the pyramids, those obelisks, like the Washington Monument, but those were all one big piece of stone. They couldn't raise the smallest one with everything we know now about mathematics and engineering with what's been postulated. So there's something doesn't add up there. But I think it's a bridge too far to claim they were built by ETs. But they were certainly, their construction and the precision of the stones cut, how far they were moved, how they were put into place. There are a lot of questions I have, but I have no proof of how that might have happened, except the man I referred to earlier from Redstone Arsenal area, who is given material occasionally. It's not always extraterrestrial. He has been given objects that are tens of thousands of years old or older, that are technological, that have been found in the ocean and elsewhere, that were of human origin and were extremely advanced technologies. So I believe that it's likely that on Earth, prior to the modern era, there have been civilizations far advanced beyond where we are, that for which we have very little record. And when that record is found, I think it's kind of swept under the carpet. You know, it's interesting. There were years ago when they did the Mars images, and they found that there were these obelisks and strange looking objects on Mars. I went out to the Goddard Space Flight Center here outside DC to meet with Mark Carlotta and some other scientists there. And they said, yep, it's been pixelated out for the public, but there are structures there. And they were very ancient, but we're talking millions of years old, millions. And I was out in California after I had disclosed this to some people, and a man came up to me from JPL, Jet Propulsion Labs, and I didn't know him. He knew who I was and said, Dr. Greer, here's the issue. You're right, those exist, but we can't disclose that. I said, why? It's not an operational ET device. It's not, it's old. He says, yes, but you don't understand how powerful this information is. I said, why? He says, if this was disclosed, it would collapse the fundamentalist orthodox belief systems of every religion on Earth. I said, what? This science and this evidence is being kept secret for religious reasons? He says, yes. Because the creation myths, now I'm not talking about most people, but those sort of fundamentalist orthodox belief systems, they'd all crumble. They'd be completely gone. And you would have to come up with something a little more rational, right? Than the world is 6,000 years old. And we, used to ride dinosaurs, like horses, if you go to the Creation Museum in Kentucky. So this is true, by the way. Those of you in urban areas, you need to kind of wake up a bit about the rest of the world. But that's just how it is. So what I tell people is that some of this evidence has been kept secret, not for scientific reasons, but for social belief and how much that information would disrupt most people's foundations of their paradigm and belief. Because there are still huge numbers of people in our country and around the world who are not rational and scientific. They're really based on their these belief systems, which would be upended. And this guy was very blunt about it, and I think he's quite correct. For example, we might find out that the origins of Homo sapiens altogether isn't what we think, either Darwinian or other. So there are all kinds of implications to this issue. This is one of the things when I was out at Lawrence Rockefeller's ranch back when we were setting up things for the Clinton administration back in September of 93 out in the Tetons. And he took me out at night on the deck and he said, look, Dr. Greer, no aspect of life on Earth will be unaffected by this being disclosed so vast and so large are the implications. I said, yes, Lawrence, that's why it's been kept so secret. So now we're touching on another whole area of concern, and that is, now I don't think most rational religious and spiritual people would have a problem with the fact they don't think the world's 6,000 years old, and there's no reason for them to think that a supreme being would leave all his hopes for intelligent life just in humans. God help us, right? So, but, there are a large number of people, and in around the world, a significant number of people who would find that very upsetting. So that's been another consideration. It's easy for hyper-rational Westerners who live in urban areas to brush that off. But if you go around the world, and we're talking a world of 8 billion people, no, they're not all like you in New York.
Imagine a civilization so advanced they don't even need wires or machinery to get things done.
Well, one thing I learned, which was I didn't understand scientifically, we understand it now, and we touch on it in the documentary Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, is that these civilizations, which are hundreds of thousands to millions of years more advanced than we are, have pretty much perfected what Elon Musk is trying to do with Neuralink, where he has a company trying to figure out how you can think to your computer, and it does things without wires. Now, as you know, Dr. John at Princeton had experimental electronic devices that people could think to, and they would react to the thought. And this has been very well reproduced all over the world. What these civilizations have are extremely accurate interfaces with consciousness and directed thought that pick up the thought as clearly as you and I are talking on this electromagnetic signal. So that's how that whole event happened. It was all based in consciousness and thought. Now, that sounds like something way out there, except when you start talking to people at the CIA, like Dr. Russell Targ, who's a laser physicist for Lockheed, who for 20 years was at the CIA doing consciousness studies, using consciousness to spy on the Soviet Union. So everyone thinks that this is very fringe. It isn't. It's only fringe because the mainstream media ridicules it. But in reality, everyone at a senior level of the intelligence community knows this is real. So I stumbled across it, and then I realized that these guys, these ET civilizations, have that ability. But I didn't understand how it worked. It was all kind of a mystery to me by age 18. Subsequently, though, I realized that the reason they were wanting me to understand it was, I guess they figured because I had some kind of sighting and contact and interest in them, but I was also experiencing these higher states of consciousness, that maybe they could, develop something with me as a young man, 18-year-old guy, where I could use it to set up and educate the public about making contact. Now, that was in 1973. I didn't do anything with it for a long time because I didn't know what to do with it until 1990.
His CE5 protocols are catching on, with tons of people worldwide trying to connect to what's out there through meditation and intention.
And we started the CE5 contact protocols, which now, of course, we have hundreds of thousands of people around the world doing it. But it was quite a journey for me as a young boy, doing that. And as you know, last summer, Demi Lovato and her friends on her birthday had the CE5 contact app, and they were practicing it. And they had this amazing ET craft come over. They all saw, it was very exciting. And they put it on Instagram. So what I'm trying to do is have people understand that you don't have to be some kind of, like Uri Geller or mystic or CIA remote viewer to do this. Every single person who's conscious and awake can connect to that quiet state of mind and do this. Because these civilizations, if you're doing this with the right attitude, let's say, and philosophy, and you're not, afraid and all that kind of silly things, they're going to pick that up and something will happen. Not every time, but they're very interested in humans going into this sort of new understanding of the cosmos, where we realize we and the cosmos are awake, and we're all sort of part of this conscious hologram known as reality. And that's really what they want us to understand, because that's the foundation of becoming interstellar. And our civilization is at the brink of going from a tribalistic warring civilization to an interplanetary one. But to do that, you have to have some foundation in understanding what is the point where we have something in common. Well, it's not our own humanity. That's humanism, because these are not humans.
Greer believes there's this universal consciousness that ties everything together, something bigger than technology itself.
It has to be something more transcendent, deeper. And that's this conscious field that's universal. This is, I call it universal consciousness or cosmic consciousness. And that they understand very well. It's not just a philosophy, it's actually an operating system. Like your computer has an operating system. This understanding of cosmic consciousness and the fact that the universe is a conscious hologram where everything's connected to each other, like in physics in a hologram, that they understand, but they also know that we have to not only understand it and intellectually begin to actually, walk that talk. Well, I think there's been an interest in this planet for millions of years. Okay, I don't think this is new. I think what became very much where we became a planet of concern, like our State Department has nations of concern, is that in the 40s when we did, that sent up a big red flag over this planet going, warning, this civilization can not only be at a point now where they can destroy all life on this planet, but shortly thereafter, we started going into space with Sputnik. We could become an existential threat to other peaceful planets, some of whom do not even have a concept of conflict, we've learned. So I think that we were viewed, it's funny because in the media in Hollywood and the internet and the whole UFO subculture, it's always, why are the aliens here and the dangerous aliens and fear, fear, fear. I'm going, no, you got it upside down, dude. It's the other way around. We're the scary ones. We're the ones who hundreds of millions of people in the last century. And we're the ones who have thousands of thermonuclear weapons. And we're the ones going into space with weapon systems that are classified that I know about and been briefed on that are 1,000 times worse than a thermonuclear weapon.
He says these advanced civilizations see our potential, but they're probably watching us stumble and wonder if we'll figure it out.
So this is the problem. The problem is that they know we have great potential and beauty within humanity, but they also know that some of the very powerful interests in the planet, what President Eisenhower called the military-industrial complex, have this sort of addiction to viewing everything as a threat. They view anything they don't understand as a threat. And as one naval intelligence guy told me, I asked him, I said, why are we targeting these ET spacecraft and not including them occasionally? He says, because we view this as our planet. If they don't ask our military's permission, we're going to kill them and shoot them down. So that is how primitive and stupid the thinking is on that. People make it very complicated. When I've been at the Pentagon briefing 3-star generals and people like this, that is quite simply the mindset. So the general public doesn't understand that, as Danny Sheehan, who's this famous civil rights and constitutional attorney, said, if you're a hammer, the whole world's a nail. So in this case, if you're a military and you're oriented towards everything being a threat that you don't understand, then they're a threat. In reality, it's the other way around. The reason you see in the media coming out through the Senate Intelligence Committee, that they're trying to posit this as a national security threat because the ETs have been seen doing surveillance over our facilities and what have you. But that's not because they're a threat. If they wanted to take us out, it'd been done in 1945. The technologies they have could have terminated our civilization in an instant. But they're not. They have a Gandhian, like Gandhi or Christ or some enlightenment. They have that level of pacifism simply because they have pulled their punches, waiting for us, we the people, to resolve this problem over the last 60 or 70 years. So that's why I left my medical career a few years ago, is to resolve this crisis that is unacknowledged.
The government claiming we don't know what these UFOs are is, according to Greer, total nonsense. We've known since the 40s and 50s.
They always say we don't know what these are. Well, that's a big lie. We've known what these objects are since the 40s and 50s. If you Google this subject, 90+% of everything that's going to come up is false information put in by the intelligence community to scare people and to make people think, brainwash them, that there's a threat, and there isn't a threat. The threat is from these covert programs. So the second big lie, I talked about the one, and that is they say, we don't know what these are when we've known what these are since the 40s and 50s. And there are two types of UFOs, man-made, which is the ones mostly seen, and extraterrestrial. And they're very different in how they look. You've seen the ET ones that are very seamless, come in and out of other dimensions. They're very almost magical. Whereas the man-made one has rivets and seams like a man-made thing. It's quite obvious that it's man-made, but it's silent. It's using anti-gravity propulsion, etc. But we've had those since October 1954. Now,
the other big lie is that they say every single time that we don't have anything that can fly the way these videos that they're showing on CNN and the New York Times. You know that every one of those videos that have been released are our man-made UFOs. None of them are extraterrestrial. And some of those are extraterrestrial, but we also have that technology. Remember, in covert programs, we've spent several $1 trillion since the 40s and 50s studying captured ET craft. That is true. And they know that they have studied this and have been able to sort of reproduce it a lot. It's called reverse engineering.
Yeah, so back engineering.
The real threat isn't from the stars, but from those who control the narrative, preserving secrecy and preparing the stage for a fabricated alien menace to manipulate and divide us.
So the back engineering, reverse engineering has been going on since the 40s. They have made a lot of progress. That's all top secret. And the big reason it's top secret, two things. They want to preserve the element of surprise to hoax an alien threat, which is what they're doing. They're using man-made UFOs with people that look made up to look like they're an alien going out abducting people. It sounds crazy. It is crazy, but that's literally what they've been doing since the 50s and 60s. Now, on top of that, and this is the big thing that concerns me, because my first great love was Earth, Gaia, this planet. And as a child, it was my real solace. I grew up in a very terrible family, very poor and very abused and all that. And I realized that the Earth was this beautiful, conscious being and alive and just magnificent. And we're destroying the planet using all these fossil fuels and all this stuff, power, when we've had the replacement for it since before I was born. So when just everyone listening, when you just Google these UFOs you see flying around, they're not using oil or jet fuel. They're using field propulsion. I won't bore people with the science behind it, but we know exactly how they're operating. My team knows exactly how they're operating. And the problem is that those systems would replace all the oil, gas, coal, and power in the world. So they want to keep that secret because the people who own all the industrial and money and the big, I call them the gangbangsters, they don't want this to come out because they're going to lose $800, $900 trillion worth of assets. So they want to keep the world addicted to this stuff and only let out solutions like solar and wind, which I have a solar farm at my place, but it's not enough energy density to run the planet and fix the environment in time for my children and grandchildren and for you.